Do Sonic games disprove tarot cards and religions? Well, the more direct question we will explore first is, what is even happening religion-wise in Sonic games? Is it even a thing in Sonic's world and paradigm? Now, this video here is not going to provide definitive conclusions or anything, although I will be poking fun at a religion or two, South Park style, on par with that. But I'm not going to be dunking too ferociously. This isn't the Pope Leo AI video. Today's going to be a much more breezy, tongue-in-cheek look at how these life-defining topics are or are not included in the Sonic series. And then you can decide for yourself if anything involved here is disproved. The Sonic games that we'll touch upon today include Sonic the Hedgehog, the first game, Sonic Unleashed, Black Knight, Shadow the Hedgehog, and finally Sonic CD. So we're actually going to start out with a trivia question that I'm going to ask you now, and don't Google it. You either know it or you don't, all right? Ready for this trivia question? Where was Sonic born? Take a moment to think about it. If you know, you know. Okay, the answer to that question is that Sonic was born on Christmas Island, and that's canon. Just ask Yuji Naka. Okay, so there's your Easter egg right off the bat. The name Christmas and Christmas Island, that name is based on Christ. Jesus Christ, who many of you have heard of. Now, the real-life Christmas Island, aka Kiridamati, is located way out in the very middle of the Pacific Ocean. And on this real-life Christmas Island, there were actually nuclear weapon tests conducted there. So for this island to be way out in the middle of the ocean, does that seem familiar? I mean, you guys have seen the Sonic Origins menus, haven't you? Now, the nuclear weapons testing that was done at the real-life Christmas Island was done by the United Kingdom and also the United States after World War II. And if the island was not evacuated, it could have had some weird side effects on the animals. So, in the game Sonic the Hedgehog, they needed a hero, they got a hedgehog. Sound familiar? Sonic is here to do what he can with all this adversity going on. Now, although the UK struck that island first with the first nuclear test, the US strike was more recent at the time of Sonic 1's creation. So basically what that means is that Eggman is American. And the first Jim Carrey Sonic movie basically explains how an American Eggman got entangled with affairs at Mushroom Hill. So here you have this real-life nihilistic war that gave rise to the conflict that is metaphorically depicted in the Sonic series, which sets the framework for all philosophical meditations in the Sonic series to come. So, let's now dive into Sonic Unleashed, a favorite of many. And of course, in that game, you have Dark Gaia and Light Gaia. And you could make the case that those figures are the closest thing to, like, Sonic's world's version of a god, if we use that vague and somewhat problematic term. Light Gaia is not necessarily attributed with the accomplishment of creating everything ever, but Light Gaia, Chip, does participate in an eternal cycle of Dark Gaia destroying the world and then Light Gaia regenerates it. So you can say that Light Gaia is a primordial entity that created the world as we know it. So when it comes to the domains of morality and cosmology, well, cosmology-wise, it all traces back to Chip. He created the world that Sonic and everyone else lives out their lives on. So within the Sonic series, is Light Gaia real? Or is it just a myth that's been passed on through the generations in order to cultivate hope? Well, Light Gaia is real. I mean, Sonic experienced firsthand, worked with Light Gaia, directly participated in scenarios with Light Gaia and Dark Gaia that involved first-hand witness accounts. So the fact that Sonic saw this and experienced it and can testify honestly about what happened is in part we can put that trust in Sonic because Sonic has a reputation that he already earned long before his encounters with Light Gaia. Now, it's worth talking about this because in the real world, if you're looking at a religion and trying to figure out if it's one of those bogus, wacky religions or not, one thing you should ask yourself is the person who began this religion, or were they a nobody before that? Because if they were a nobody, then they would have an incentive to present this narrative about the creation of the universe and their particular prophet role in it, because if people buy into that reading of events, then that nobody would then gain a great deal of power. And I imagine that the benefits that come with this power would be directly skewered in Matt and Trey's musical on the topic, so we don't even need to go into that. Okay, so the difference between some random nobody in Utah versus Sonic the Hedgehog is that Sonic was already an established hero who had a ongoing track record of altruism and being trustworthy, so he has a whole lot more credibility than just some random guy who no one's ever heard of and convince some people that he's a prophet. Sonic witnessed Light Gaia himself, and from that point on, it's very simple for Sonic. Sonic is just going to only ever honestly tell you about what he experienced from that point on. Okay, so now we move along to the game Sonic and the Black Knight. Now, those of you who have played that game, you know that one of the antagonists, Merlina, plans to make the kingdom changeless and eternal. Which on the surface, that might sound appealing because it's the end of suffering and death and loss. But Sonic's retort to that is to say, hey, whoa, who would want a world that goes on forever? That sounds pretty lame. These are Sonic's words, guys. Sonic is awesome. Sonic goes on to say, every world has its end. I know that's kind of sad, but that's why we gotta live life to the fullest in the time that we do have. At least, that's what I figure. Okay, now anyone worth their weight in GameCubes would have played Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, in which case you are familiar with this guy describing how Solid Snake is similar to Sonic.
I can read people's minds, and each mind that I peered into was stuffed with the same single object of obsession. That selfish and atavistic desire to pass on one's seed. Every living thing on this planet exists to mindlessly pass on their DNA. We're designed that way, and that is why there is war. But you are different. You're the same as us. We have no past, no future. We live in the moment. That's our only purpose.
Now, this description of Solid Snake, which overlaps with Sonic, is also consistent with the mission statement in the Sonic comics. Now, the idea that Sonic would just up and give this mission statement so overtly and to the point is somewhat controversial. Maybe that's a little bit too on the nose for what Sonic's all about. But regardless, it does touch upon that same core aspect of Sonic's operating principles. Sonic's statements reads as follows. I live for the moment. I want to see the world and find all its thrills and adventures and enjoy them. I want everyone to have the freedom to do that too. And you wouldn't get that opportunity if I took it away from you. I've made peace with enough enemies to know there is a better way. Alright, that's part and parcel to Sonic's whole deal. So now let's look at the complete opposite converse of that in the example of Shadow the Hedgehog 05 for the Nintendo GameCube, which is a 9 out of 10 game, as you know. 10 out of 10 if you ask me. Shadow 05 has a very jarring and relevant depiction, and you hear this song as the ending of some of the darker campaigns in the options of Shadow's roots. Alright, so here are the lyrics, guys. No more gods. No more graves. Are you friend or fiend? No more life. No more death. Somewhere in between. Okay, so the proposition that Shadow is considering here, along with Black Doom and that whole brigade, is that Shadow is tempted to join and support this movement that aspires to stop the normal circle of life and death, kind of like what we were seeing in Sonic and the Black Knight. But the reason why Shadow should reconsider this in his talks with Sonic is that life as humans or as anthropomorphic hedgehogs, life has a particular pacing. An arc that is finite, and because it is finite, you make it count. Now, the Shadow 05 lyrics go on to say, well, we're almost dead. Almost dead to the world. Okay, so Shadow's evil squadron has clearly lost the support of mostly everyone, and so Shadow is here tempted to succumb to the nihilism of just calling the entire thing off. Let's call the whole thing off, but you guys know what the one true canon ending of Shadow 05 is, don't you? Now, this song was not specifically written for this Shadow the Hedgehog game. Nor was it made by Sonic Team. In fact, this song also appeared in a movie that came out before the game Shadow 05, and that movie is Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave. And this song was written and performed by a band independent of Sonic Team, which you may know as Power Man 5000. Now, their big hit was the song When Worlds Collide, which was in frequent rotation back when I used to watch music videos on TV, back when that was still a thing. What you gonna do, baby, baby? That's a pretty good song. You should look it up after this video. But while those worlds are colliding with Power Man 5000, let's arrive at the capstone, cornerstone case study of this video today, Sonic CD and the tarot cards that Amy embraces and utilizes. The thing about the tarot cards that Amy uses is that Amy's character is a direct contrast with Sonic, because as we've seen in many examples, Sonic lives for the present and Amy just flat out does not. Amy is instead preoccupied with what's next, like, oh, I gotta marry Sonic, oh, I gotta build a legacy for the next generation. I gotta interpret these tarot cards because I don't know how to steer my life otherwise. That is, for better and worse, the Amy mission statement. You see, Amy is a seeker, but not in a good way. Amy is a seeker in sort of the way that Gerard the completionist's mom was. Gerard's mom was always just more. Gerard's mom says, I want 5 kids. She gets her wish. She wants to set up a flower shop business. All right, now those cheap thrills have worn off, so what is the completionist mom going to do next? She's going to go on a spiritual seeking tour across America to different prominent spiritual voices in religious communities. And Gerard tagged along for this road trip tour, including a stop at those slapping rituals that Paul Dano did to Daniel Day-Lewis in that good movie. Now, much like the completionist's mom, Amy is constantly just blowing around in the wind, and she needs artificial constructs to give the arc of her life the structure that she can't piece together by just being her true hedgehog self. So the fact that Amy's tarot card predictions all work perfectly to a T within the story of Sonic CD shows you that this is in fact a fictional mechanic that doesn't actually work in the real world. Now, I don't need to drag out the condemnation of tarot cards all that much because South Park has already done it for us in the classic episode entitled The Biggest Douche in the Universe, which basically covers psychics, mediums, tarot cards, and all those manipulative pseudosciences that prey on people's insecurities and vulnerabilities, serving the company's incentives of money and power. So sometimes you come across the take in the community that, oh, well, tarot cards can be good for some people since it works for them. Now, the problem word here in this sentiment is works. That word is way too vague in the way that it's being implied. You can suggest that it works because some people do successfully derive happiness and structure from it, but it doesn't mean that the mechanics that tarot cards claim are actually true, that they are actually working. You can say that it works to make you maybe feel good today, but that carries with it a cost of misinformation and compromised critical thinking. I mean, you think about Pope Leo. Do you think that with Catholicism, oh, it works for Pope Leo? So what if Pope Leo feels good on this particular afternoon? Pope Leo says that expressing gay love and romance is wrong, and you should resist it and be chaste for your entire life. So if you're going to say that Catholicism works for Pope Leo, it's like, hey, what? Whoa. You want to talk about a fatal cost of tarot cards? That would be the decision where tarot card users will sometimes turn down opportunities that are in fact positive and beneficial, but they only push it away because, oh, this week's tarot card reading told you to steer clear of people wearing a gray shirt or whatever else. Another landmine is that things can happen in your life that are in fact totally arbitrary, but a tarot person will interpret those random occurrences as, oh, it's all part of a divine plan and intervention, in ways that are ultimately counterproductive. Like you take the example of a student who wants to go to college, so in high school he's taking college prep classes. But then he shows up to sophomore year, year 2, and he finds out that there was some kind of administrative error in the system that bumped him down from college prep classes down to standard level. And so the student thinks, oh, that's where God wants him to be. And it's like, no, if the student wants to go to college, he does in fact need to take those college prep courses. So if you're just a regular American person and you're attributing random things like these to God's intervention, it becomes a touch arrogant. Stay in those college prep level courses, do your homework, and just unwind with Knuckles Chaotix for the Sega 32X. Now, I did not announce this game in the opening lineup of games in this video today, but it is a quick fun fact that I'm going to offer you as an after-dinner mint. Knuckles Chaotix, of course, features the character of Vector the Crocodile. Now, in the original game, the original Japanese manual, this didn't carry over into the US fanfic manual, but in the canonical original Japanese instruction manual for Knuckles Chaotix for the Sega 32X, Vector is described as believing in the existence of God. And furthermore, as it directly connects to the plot of Knuckles Chaotix, Vector came to the island where Knuckles Chaotix takes place in the first place because Vector heard news about an island of miracles. So that's something. Now, anyone that's played Sonic Heroes and has looked into that game at all, you know that Sonic Heroes was sort of the benchmark of a reboot, refresh, new start for those Chaotix characters, including Vector. We all know that Vector's whole deal is that he is obsessed with cash. So that's kind of a final vignette reflecting the cautionary tale that you will sometimes hear in the media in 2025, like, oh, people are quote-unquote losing their religion, and they're turning to other problematic dogmas to fill the void. And it's like, no, you're framing it wrong. To say that people are quote-unquote losing their religion is a very unfair, overcharged way of making it seem like society is deteriorating. So let's instead use the useful and fair categorization of a person's morality and cosmology. Okay? So all that's really happening in our time in the 2020s is that more and more people are acknowledging their honest conscience that prioritizes fairness and critical thinking. Almost everyone already does this for the topic of gay romantic love. You follow your conscience and honest sense of fairness, and you indicate that gay love is not a wrong thing that you should abstain from. Looking at you, Pope Leo. So all that's really happening in the 2020s is that more and more people are opening up that conscience and fairness criteria to all aspects of morality and cosmology. People are gradually cutting out the imagination land component. The way they removed Santa from their diet of beliefs at age 11 is identical to the way that they removed Jesus from their diet of beliefs at age 19. It's identical. At least I was 19 when that happened. Alex Yard, here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone, terrestrial internet radio, deep in the heart of Boston, Massachusetts. So are you ready for the post-credits after Dinner Mint? You ready for this? We are going to return to Christmas Island, the real-life one, for some more real-life lore surrounding this important location and Sonic lore inspiration. The earliest recorded discovery of Christmas Island was by an English sailor, William Dampier. While on routine patrol, his ship was blown off course, and he stumbled upon Christmas Island 28 days later, or at least the legends say. Furthermore, you should know that the highest point of elevation on Christmas Island is called Joe's Hill. Now, the guy who named Joe's Hill was, of course, Joe English from Massachusetts, Metro Boston to be specific, where I, Alex Yard, have been known to go candlepin bowling. A Massachusettan was stuck on the real-life Christmas Island for a couple of years because the Spanish flu was making the rounds at the time, which interrupted most forms of transport. So basically, that was the lockdown prequel in the late 1910s. Sound familiar to what happened to us in the year 2020 when the first Sonic movie with Jim Carrey came out? So listen, in the face of all this adversity, morality and cosmology is what helps guide us in situations of crisis, war, starvation as a war tactic, pandemics, or losing the Super Bowl. And as we travel through this finite life of ours, Sonic's advice is to live for the present and make the best of this admittedly horrifying world that we did not ask for. Now, I don't know if Sonic has ever read Candide by Voltaire, but there's so much in there that would resonate with him. with the genuine mission statement that I stand with Sonic in solidarity with, we must cultivate our garden. Now, the fact is, out of all the people watching this now, more than 50% of you, either you're not happy or fulfilled, you're depressed or insecure or bored. But as soon as you decide to, you can wake up in the present and join the cause with Sonic, Voltaire, me, and Solid Snake. Good night, everybody!